plugin of the week is the Universal Audio Ampex ATR-102. This is a classic tape machine that was originally built in the mid-1970s by the Ampex Corporation. This tape was actually a real evolution in technology in terms of its design. The servo-controlled motor mechanism for the capstan and for the reel motors served really well to kind of open up or stabilize the sound. One of the bigger problems in working with tape machines were the effects of wow and flutter, which had to do with inconsistencies in the way that the tape was being pulled through, its stickiness, its movement up and down on the heads, the variations in speed due to the motor mechanisms that would be driving the tape through. And with a capstan system, what happens is you basically have a more consistent motor mechanism that pulls the tape through, and then the reels actually just pull in opposite directions from each other to maintain the proper tension. And that's kind of basically the way that it lays out. It's a very it's an amazing design, because in its original design in the ATR-102, or there were actually variations, it was like the 100 series. I remember working on a tape machine. It was a 4-track, and you could make it a 2-track by plopping in a 2-track head stack. And you could put in a 1/4-inch head stack, you could put in a 1/2-inch head stack. Later on, they actually made 1-inch head stacks. And the sound quality increasing for each of them, and they've actually emulated all of these different things. This is like probably my favorite, and I would say, like, in terms of a mix tape machine that people would go to. So this is not a multi-track. This is sort of a mix down tape machine that people would use. It just sounded ridiculous. A bit of a pain in the neck to calibrate and set up and maintain, but really just kind of a workhorse, and with just a ridiculous warm sound. And also, like, a big thing with mastering studios. All the studios that I had ATR-102s, and whenever we needed to print something, pretty much would always go to it if it was given there as an option. Really an amazing tape machine. Some people have gone through great lengths to modify them and do different things. And what Universal Audio did here is just insane in terms of, like, the amount of detail and what they kind of put into this. So what you see here are the different, the 2 reels here, on-off power switch, tape speed select, as you would expect. This is actually the capstan wheel. You can actually use this for editing, which is a whole other thing. You could see these cuts right here. That's like there was probably a mirror taped to this at some point with lines of blow on it. So cutting it all up, I'm sure that's what it, or tape, cutting tape for tape editing. That's actually what it was for. And a good place to put your cigarette over here when you're doing some editing, or if it's not hanging out of your mouth or whatever, kind of old school. But you get different tape formulations with the different tape speeds. You could select a different size head stack. What you get was, as you go with the bigger head, like a 1-inch head, you got a higher audio quality, more hi-fi sounding. Really cool. 1/2-inch was what I had always worked with. I don't think I ever, actually, no, that's not true. I did record a couple of times my mixes to a 1-inch head. It's really ridiculous. But the original machines, I think, also had a 1/4-inch head stack, which has creates a lot of interesting options. So you could set what head. You can actually do playback from the sync head or the repro head, which has 2 different sounds. The sync head is the record head, but it has playback capabilities. And then you have different calibration settings for how hard you're hitting the tape, and you have different tape formulations, up to tape formulations that vary from different tape speeds. So it's really cool. There's so many features with this. It's like I'm not exactly sure where to begin. Let's start by opening up the hood. So when we open up the hood here, they actually set this up to the point where you can go in and you can do the alignment procedures. It has an MRL built into it and a tone generator, and you set your input and output to meter repro or input signal and everything to do calibration. So with an MRL tape, the MRL tape is a magnetic reference laboratory. It was a tone reel that people used to calibrate tape machines. It was like a way of creating like a consistent tape machine alignment standard for all recording studios. So every studio that had analog tape machines, which were all of them basically from the 60s through the 70s into the 80s, would have an MRL tape, and the MRL tape would have a certain magnetic field strength recorded on it, and then you would use that as a way to calibrate the playback and record electronics of each individual tape machine. And so they kind of set this up, built it in, and this gives you the ability to make the physical adjustments to the high end and low end on the and also to the level, which they actually use from up here, but the high frequency, low frequency gain, as well as the bias level, all from just like you would align the tape machine itself with like a little tweaker, a little mini screwdriver. They did everything from emulating the wow and flutter characteristics, which you can turn on or off, the noise, which is the tape hiss, which you can turn on or off, the crosstalk. On a 2-track machine, magnetic, when you record something to a magnetic tape, magnetic fields don't stay static. They are actually constantly radiating. And so they just get weaker the more distant you get away from them. And as a result, on a tape head, some of the left side information bleeds into the right channel, and some of the right side information bleeds into the left channel. And that's called crosstalk. It's just a natural byproduct of analog tape. There's a tape delay unit built into here, which actually the delay times change. So if you go to slower tape speeds, it gives you, then you get a plus minus on the vary speed there, which is really cool. You could actually still set, which is impossible, set different delay times for the left and the right side, because obviously you can't have one tape head receiving, or one half of the tape head receiving one tape speed and the other receiving the other. But this is digital, and that's kind of the benefit here. And then also, I think one of the things that I loved so much about the tape machine was the sound of the transformer, which was basically an isolation transformer, but some people felt like it cut down on the fidelity of it. I always thought it added like a body and a warmth into the sound, which is really ridiculous. And so what they have is some people would modify this out or cut this out. The idea of the isolation transformer is that you would never end up with an impedance mismatch from the output of your console, which I've seen literally when there's an impedance mismatch, it could literally pull down the output level of your console like 20 dB, like insane. It's just like plugging an XLR from one place to another. It's crazy. So the transformer isolation prevents any of that sort of thing. So you could turn that on or off. So what's really cool about this is that when you start with this, you will start, generally the way I start is with a head configuration. So just to give you like an idea, I'm just going to run a little bit of audio through here, and then I'm going to cut it without vocals so we can hear it. So now, if I want to go to the lo-fi side, I can actually go here to 3.75 inches per second, quarter inch, and then I could literally go to like really crappy tape formulation in the sync head. So I can literally go down to like something that would be like the quality of a cassette tape that had like gummed up oxide on the heads, completely masking like all high frequencies, to actually to something that is extremely hi-fi, which would be going up to like if we were working here. Okay, well, let's go back. Oh, I actually have to, if I go up to 30 inches per second here, then I can get a 1-inch selection, and then I could go to something that's completely open and hi-fi. And just to give you an idea of what this sounds like, this is without it. And then, so what I can do here with the calibration with the different tapes is that, as I go through different tape formulations, so let's go to somewhere in between. Let's say I go to like a 1/2-inch tape here. Then I can select from a variety of different tape formulations based on the tape speed. So I'll go through the different tape speeds to see what I like. 30 inches per second is going to be the most hi-fi and balanced frequency response-wise. 15, what you'll hear is a little bit more of a boost on the low end and not as much clarity and openness on the top end. As you go down to 7.5, it'll be even more so. You get like a bigger boom on the low end and sort of a warmed up high frequency. And then 3.75 goes like more lo-fi. So I'll just kind of quickly go through the options so you can hear it. I'll explain that boost at like 15K in a second. So what happens at 15 inches per second, there's sort of a math that's involved with tape heads, and it has to do with the gap, the width of the gap, which is like like I think on this tape machine, a repro head, I believe, is 1.5 thousandths of an inch in terms of the gap width. So what ends up happening is that that gives you a certain frequency response pattern. And so there's a natural playback characteristic which actually makes it so that the higher frequencies actually play back more cleanly through the head, and as you go lower in frequency, it actually drops off at like 6 dB per octave. And so they have a curve which is meant to compensate for that. I'll get into that in a second as well, because that exists here at 15 inches per second. But what happens is there's a maximum frequency that exists that the tape machine will run at. And what happens is as the frequency increases on the high end, it actually hits a peak signal where the peaks on either side of the head actually line up, and you got a maximum gain output, and then it drops off rapidly after that. So what happens is that peak, when you go to 15 inches per second, kind of pulls in like around 15, 16K or so, and then drops off after that. So you get this kind of boost apparently on the top end that's really, really cool. And this is sort of like the setting that most people would kind of go to, would be the 15 inches per second. Now, the cool thing about this is that there's two EQ characteristics which compensate for that offset. There's the NAB curve, which is the US standard, National Association of Broadcasters, and the CCIR curve, which, didn't do my research. Can't remember what that is. That's the European standard. But it's a British standard that I think I want to say it was created by the BBC, but I could be wrong about that. Right, so you can get like a little bit more of an open sound here, a little bit of an edgier kind of sound with the CCIR setting. So you can go to there. So you could already see like how much we're getting in, and the options get sort of insane from here, because as you start, let's just say that we like 15, and we were actually on a 1/4 inch head. I'm not sure how we ended up there. Let's go back here for a second. Very similar characteristic, actually a little bit more open here on that. Now we can actually go to different tape formulations. So different tape speeds have different tape formulations. GP9 was a high-end tape that was designed to handle a +9 calibration level. So what that means is you actually bring in the input level up +9 dB, and then you bring the output level down by 9 dB so that it looks the same on the meter, but it hits the tape harder. And because if you wanted to just hit the tape harder, you could just drive more input level into it. But the problem is that the meter only goes up to +3. So once the needle hits +3, you don't know how much farther you are above that. So if you calibrate the machine where you offset the input gain and the output gain, so the playback level is shown here on, right, so we're metering the output level here. If I set that, now this is going to show post-record what the level is on playback. And because that's compensated for, we're cranking up the gain essentially by 9 dB on the input, but backing it off by 9 dB on the output, it shows up on the meter exactly the same. So what you get is more tape compression. So this is like a way of adding more tape compression. GP9 was created by a company called Quantigy, which used to be called Ampex. They also created a formulation 456. The original, I had to research this because there was a remake of this particular tape. The 900 is a BASF tape, which I used and really loved, and then a company called RMG kind of remade it, and SM900 did another formulation. I'm pretty sure that was a copy of that. I could be wrong. I believe they bought the rights out for that. And then you have a Scotch 250. If you go to other tape speeds, they actually have a Maxell tape, 3590 reel-to-reel tape, and then an old, also an old Scotch 111, right? So the Scotch 250 and the 111. And the way that I was actually able to figure it out is like if you look here, you could see there's like a gold reel. That was a classic thing for the Scotch and 3M tapes. 456 had this standard, and I looked at the cutouts here, and when I went over to the model for the 900, I looked at this and saw the curve, and then I just verified it. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. That was where that was from. And it was able to tell it. So they kind of give you a clue, but they can't really tell you exactly what it is. So anyway, that's like, one of the basic things there. So now you can go through all of the different settings here with the different tape formulations. So if you look at this, essentially they probably should have done this the other way, because the high level accepting tapes are down here on the list, yet the high gain selection goes up here. So 250 was originally designed for +3, and you could hit it a little bit harder by going +6. Same with 456. The 900 and GP9 were designed for the higher input levels. So if you want more headroom, less tape compression, but a little bit of analog openness, then you can go with the higher end tape, but go with a lower tape alignment. If you want to get like really heavy with the compression, then you go to the 250 or 456, which each have a different tonal characteristic, and then you hit it hard with like a +9 or a +7.5, if that makes sense. So you really just go insane here with it. It also, it has an auto calibration, so you'll notice that these settings change. Like, so they store these presets, because normally if you were to set up a tape, it's a whole procedure to actually line it up, and every tape formulation is going to calibrate and bias a little bit differently. And so they set it up here so that that is already done, and it displays the settings on here, which is crazy. But if you take this off, then you could switch between the different tape formulations without actually changing the alignment. So it's like nuts with this thing. So here we can go, we can show you like the 250, and as we go up to the 900, it'll be a little more open, or less tape compression, put it that way. Right, so the 900 is warmer, the GP9 is much more open. This is just kind of hitting pretty hard. And if I go to the other end, you hear how that sound opens up. One thing that you'll notice, and this is very true of the original, is that the harder you hit the tape, the more it starts to cut down or warm up high frequencies. So this is like, insane in terms of the amount of possibilities that you could do in terms of tonal colorations, and each tape formulation will work a little bit differently. But the harder you hit the tape, the more you're compressing, the more you start to cut down on higher frequencies. And so that's like a component. So if you're thinking about this and you want the most open sound, you go with the least tape compression, and that allows it to kind of have more natural movement. What you get is a grittier ballsiness as you go to higher compression schemes by raising up the calibration level. And this is really the secret in terms of working with this. As far as getting this, about the only thing you can do, because I wish it had sort of an A/B system here with this, is you can copy your settings and then just kind of go back and forth, set up something, do an alternate, and then paste the settings back to see what it's like before. But going back and forth is not the easiest thing here on the UA stuff. Listen to what that does with the snare. Oh, it went back to 1/4 inch. Oh, maybe because I'm switching up these things. This is like a little crazy making here. When you switch down here there to 3.75, there is no 1/2 inch option. It's only 1/4 inch, and that's why. So sorry, like some of these demonstrations will be less obvious right? But you could hear that openness change. But you can hear how it really pulls the sound together. Now here, this is a subtle thing. I just want to show a couple other things here and wrap this, because this one, I literally can go on and on with different settings and things. I usually like to leave a little bit of the natural wow and flutter in. You have calibration settings, which keep it really low, but you can create some kind of dramatic warbling kind of effects with it by putting that in, right? So again, those are variations in the tape mechanism, the way that it pulls through, and the way that the head, how evenly it rides across the heads. That's more or less the wow and flutter type of effect. And the crosstalk here, this will mono up everything just a touch. Okay? So you hear how that kind of opens up a little bit, and then you got the transformer. So let's go back here, and this will add like a warmth to the overall sound. Also a solidity. You really hear it in the bass. And then again with the noise, you can put that in, and then you have the ability to add hiss and hum, whatever amount if you want. So you can really go, like, if you wanted to take like for a certain effect and go really lo-fi like an old tape, you can literally go sync head, 1/4 inch, 3.75, go to like some old beat up Maxell tape, and then track something or run an effect through it with all kinds of warbling and wow and flutter on it and noise, and actually capture. It's like a really amazing effect. Like this is like, it's insane, this plugin. You could just I've been using it pretty consistently now for about 8 months, and I use it a lot in mastering work, and it's just a tonal coloration machine. You just go nuts with it. And I still, after all that time of using it nearly on an everyday basis, I am still learning things about this plugin and how to use it and get to it. It's like an insane amount of options. There is no tape emulation plugin that comes anywhere close to the amount of possibilities that this tape machine comes into. And so, there's something there that is really cool. And again, even just tons of features here on top of it, getting into the calibration option. I could do like probably a whole, 10-hour course just on this particular plugin. That's kind of how intense that it gets when you start getting into all the options of it. But anyway, there you have it. The Ampex ATR-102, an all-time classic tape machine from the mid-70s. And definitely one, if you have a UA system, that is worth getting for your collection if you're into analog tape compression, emulations, if you do mastering work, mixing work, or anything like that, and you like that kind of vibe for your mixing work. All right, plugin of the week, UA Ampex ATR-102.